Welcome back to SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, we are so happy to be back with you. And I want you to know we have a special guest. Not only is he my friend, he's a collaborator for the whole world, and particularly with what we do in terms of the civil rights movement. We are the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And today we have Attorney Kevin Kimbal, who's out of Washington, D.C., who does a lot of research. A lot of the facts and things you hear me say, hey, they come from this man right here in terms of our going back and forth on the issues. And he said, Charles, let me research it for you. Ladies and gentlemen, none other than Attorney Kevin Kimbal. Good to have you, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Well, in other words, you are a great friend to SCLC and others, but your commitment to SCLC, I would say in collaboration and what we do, is tremendous. Okay. You are our chief of information, research. Tell it like it is. We like that, Kevin. Just tell the people based on what you do.
So basically, I'm in D.C. I used to be a lobbyist, do a lot of policy work. I'm a researcher, obviously. I work with economists and others on policy formulation. We talk about things that are going on in the world, kind of keep track of what's going on in the world so that African Americans, members of SCLC and others can know what our challenges are and what we're facing. As you can imagine, at this point in time, we're under a lot of pressure. In fact, the thing I want to talk about most today is the fact that, this reverse discrimination effort is really gaining steam. And, I don't think people are worried enough. To me, this is an existential crisis that, everything we've worked for the past 60 years since we started having the civil rights movement or the success of the civil rights movement has been unwound.
Yes.
We'll could talk about the Voting Rights and Civil Rights Acts. They just got rid of affirmative action in schools. Now there's a group of conservative of people who've got a lot of funding who are filing lawsuits against anything that African Americans are anything that's geared towards helping African Americans. So just here in Atlanta, what's that fund? The Fearless Fund. The black ladies, they got sued for giving $25,000 grants.
And what did that stand? Where's that standing right now? So
the lawsuit's ongoing. The judge had thrown it out, but they filed they appealed that suit, and the appeals court reinstated the injunction. So they are right now in a holding pattern. They are not allowed to do these grants. And the idea is, we say this is a good example that this is not about money. This is not about economic competition. So people are trying to put logic around what these guys are after. But if you think about it, they're spending more on the lawsuits than the amount of the grants they were given.
Is that coming from the young man out of Austin, Texas?
Bloom, yeah, Mr. Bloom is this. He's this. But was it Stephen Miller?
Yes.
Another one of Trump's guys has another group of people, and they're filing lawsuits. So they sued Starbucks.
Right.
They sued. They sued the SBA.
And what are they suing for? Would you say?
So they're suing to stop any remedial efforts to help with economic inclusion for black people.
Even in the law firms.
They
selling the internships and
internships. They've sued 7 or 8 law firms that I know of, and 3 have already settled.
Why law firms?
One, it's probably to hold down the number of lawyers coming out, minority lawyers coming, give them opportunities. But secondly, if they can win these, if these people capitulate, then they're less likely to file a lawsuit, to be a part of lawsuits going forward.
Right.
And so from where I stand, you look going back just 5 to 7 years. There's just been a growing ebb of this thing, and they've sued USDA.
Okay,
right? Remember they sued the ag. That. They sued the SBA.
Yes,
the
SBA went on a pause, didn't it?
So the 8A program, but before that they sued about the PPP loans. Remember they tried to have a special opportunity for them. They sued on that. Then they sued. So right now the 8A program, you have to submit an affidavit about why, as a black person, you've been discriminated against or how you've been discriminated in order for you to qualify.
Oh, my Lord.
It used to be, obviously, as a minority, you would be qualified for that.
And you're talking about Small Business Administration.
Small Business Administration, correct. And so that is now a whole different program.
And we're already without access to capital.
So the story, our economists that we work with put out a report. The SBA gave out, I don't know, maybe $10 billion worth of loans, 7A loans last year. And only $1 billion of that went to African Americans. So we were the lowest on the totem pole. So Hispanics had 2 or 3 billion, Asians had like 4 billion, et cetera. And out of that, here's the other thing: of that 1 billion, only 25 million came from black banks.
Wow.
Out of $1 billion, and out of 10 billion, so out of $10 billion for the small business loans, only 25 million came from black banks.
25 with a M?
Million, 20 out of 10 billion.
Wow.
So we are so these efforts to stop us from being engaged or some remedial action is going to mean that number will always be the same or less, because anytime you try to do something special for minorities or African Americans, there's going to be a lawsuit.
So, Attorney Kimble, what can we do with fair-minded thinking people of all ethnicity working with African Americans and people? Now, let me just say this before you answer that. Mm-hmm. In my perception, racism has nothing to do with pigmentation, because you got some black folks over there part of the problem, not that many, but some. Racism to me is to bring about exclusion of those unwanted. And it's all about money and control. So racism is not about the color of the skin per se, but to keep most of us, black, white, green, or blue, in a poverty condition.
So I will say, I've shared this, and maybe when you film this, you air this, you can actually put this on the tape. But that what's it called, the Southern strategy video I always show about the guy talking about how they use economics as a racial as a substitute for racism, and as you go through this, what you see is that they're holding everyone down, but they're using black people as the face of that.
Wow. I like that explanation. See, that paint a beautiful picture for people who don't understand. They want to hold most people down.
But they use us
as we the face.
We're the face of it.
And then by us being the face, the ones who also being held down, they say, oh, it ain't coming at us.
Right. You don't even realize, or you're frustrated, but you don't know why you're frustrated. For instance, all this talk about the budget, like we have a big budget deficit. Right. So, and thank you for agreeing to let me sign on to efforts to not increase the debt ceiling.
Right.
Because you go through the budget, because we have a $3 trillion, $6 trillion budget or whatever, but $3 trillion of it's already set. So $1 trillion for the defense, $700 billion for Medicare, $700 billion for Social Security, and $800 billion for debt service. So that's half the money's already spent, and we're still short about $1.5 trillion. So, but they trick us into this conversation with we have to cut spending.
Right.
But of course, you can't cut spending. Right. Because everything that needs to be done, like we're going to cut disaster relief.
Right.
Or are we going to cut, not pay bank failures? I mean,
Right.
what are we going to start cutting? So they put all that on us and say, well, the reason we don't have this money is because black people got special treatment.
Think about Social Security.
Yeah.
They talking about in 10 years, 8 to 10 years, might not be no. We paid into that.
Yeah.
Number two, they borrowed from Social Security.
Yeah.
Am I right?
They borrowed it. Yep.
They borrowed from Social Security, and now they talking about if it went for Social Security, we wouldn't have all these deficits.
Yep.
My Lord, what is going on with this system?
We are
Attorney Kimble.
We have to do our part. One, we have to win elections.
Okay.
Our people, and then we have to hold the people who win elections accountable for what they do.
Black money matters.
Black money matters. That's my favorite.
That's you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you've been hearing me quoting that. I give speeches on that. Black money matters. It came from him. Now, I can tell you that because I'm going to give another one in 2 weeks. And the title, guess what it's going to be? Black money matters. Can you explain that about politics, voting, and the money?
Yeah. So we have abdicated our responsibility. We go along and get along has been the deal. And we lose these battles. So sometimes Republicans get in, like when Trump was in and the Republicans ran, they did that thing called opportunity zones. And opportunity zones was a $2 trillion tax giveaway to rich people, right? People who, they had capital gains, so they allowed them to invest it in a certain way so they didn't have to pay any taxes on it.
Right.
None of it benefited anybody in the country except for the rich real estate people.
Not for poor people.
$2 trillion. Like, mind you, we're borrowing money as we speak, but they gave away $2 trillion to these people.
Good God Almighty.
Other issues, but people vote. Like you and I have talked about this. I would rather them not do the debt ceiling.
Right.
If we don't want to pay for the spending,
right,
then we should stop spending it and let them figure out how they want to cut it. Because what they're doing is they say America's going to become a majority minority country in 10 years or 15 years. they're giving us a bankrupt country to leaving us. They're going to
Yes.
bankrupt the country
Yes.
so it can't run
Yes.
when they're no longer the majority.
Right.
And that is a real
And
problem.
that's what has happened to a lot of our major cities.
Yes, that's absolutely right. That's right. That's
You know,
absolutely
you left us with the cities of leadership.
Yep.
But you took the money.
all the
And you
money.
moved away from the city.
That's right, took all
Because you
the-
don't want to pay the taxes.
Don't want to help out. So.
I just thank you, Attorney Kimball, for all the work that you have put into the information that we are getting, not only today, but on a continuous basis. And I'm not the only one. They're elected officials, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not the only one benefiting.
Yeah.
But I pray to God to give me someone like Attorney Kimball who see what I see, and then with him being an economist in terms of what he does, economically, he is the best. You don't say it, I'm saying it.
That's a sad statement for the rest of the country. If I'm the best, we're in trouble.
Well, not only you the best, you're fair. And that's why the president doesn't have you in a different position, because you will be fair. And we are on the brink of poverty with all our people. Housing.
Yep.
Can you talk about that? You know, you and I talked about housing and affordable housing. Right here at my office, people walking around buck naked,
homeless.
mentally ill, homeless.
Yeah.
Talk a little about that.
Yeah, it comes back to priorities. We are not holding people accountable. There is plenty of we have a 25 or 27 trillion dollar economy, so we generate a lot of money. But that money is only going to increase the number of billionaires. It's not trickling. We are not using our tax system. We're not using our largesse to help our people. It is crazy. I mean, there's no reason we should be servicing 30-something trillion dollars worth of debt. I mean, it makes no sense. We have plenty of money. Remember, just 30 years ago when Bill Clinton was president, we had a budget surplus. Then we cut taxes on rich people so they wouldn't have to do it. So, you could give me any individual, like healthcare. I just saw a thing this morning. There's 815 counties in America that are insulin deserts, so people can't get their insulin. Right? Well, there's no reason for that. I mean, that is strictly a function that we've decided that we'd rather, Jeff Bezos not pay any taxes than make sure people have their insulin. And that we have to hold ourselves accountable for that.
As an economist, I heard someone say that was in a really political position with the current administration, that what's wrong with inflation is that we need more folks to lose jobs. Lord have mercy. I heard that, Attorney Kimble. Now let me just say this. My first encounter with that, soon as I would pray to God, put me in front of that person, I would say, why don't you give up your job, the first one, as an example.
To help out, right?
Yeah, to help out. But the money problem with inflation is coming from the rich.
Yeah.
Because they're making so much money. Am I right or am I wrong?
So our inflation problem is not an inflation. So traditionally, we think of inflation, you think of it as either a lack of supply, right? So it causes price pressures up. Because but we don't have shortages of anything. We don't have any shortages, right? We don't. The second thing is you have a devaluation of your currency. Well, that's not true. Our currency is the strongest country in the country. So what we have with our inflation is that when all that money came in during COVID, the corporations realized people had extra money, so they started raising prices to make sure, because they can't have you have. Remember during COVID we had $1.4 trillion worth of savings at that point. Now it's down to like $4 billion or something like that. I mean, so all that money. So the whole point of raising these interest rates was to suck all the money out of the people that have been saving, because they don't want you to have any money saved, because then they have leverage over you in the labor markets.
My Lord, I would see people during that particular era, just 2-3 years ago. Where people got that money and they went and bought big, large TVs, because basically they're living for today.
Yeah, well, they were saving. They were saving. And people were saving that money. Two things happened during COVID. One, people didn't have to go to work into the office, which saved people thousands of dollars. Transportation, eating out, parking.
Right.
And so we had a pretty good size. I mean, people did spend some of it, but we had.
But you did have some savings.
Yeah, a big number. Like we said, we've traded in 1.3 or 1.4 trillion dollars worth of savings for like $1 trillion worth of credit card debt.
Okay.
I mean, that's the true. I mean, people are now living on their credit cards.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the inflation's gotten so bad. Again, but most of it is price gouging and manipulation. Very little of it. Like one day, a month ago, the price of oil dropped like $20 a barrel. I mean, that's not a structural economic. That is strictly in the spot market. They figured they could just drop the price because they needed to make the sales move. Or cars, right? Car prices are what have. But do you know that there's some places now where the car notes are 8 years? They have 8-year car notes.
Yeah.
Do you know that's a mini mortgage to get a car?
That's a mortgage.
And so, or that 40% of car loans are $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of this pushing down the economic well-being of the country, housing, everything.
You can forget about it.
It's
just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And people getting evicted right here in Metro Atlanta.
Yeah,
I mean, it's astronomical.
Yes.
They're getting evicted and nobody cares.
Yeah.
Now, in closing.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
In closing, very good information, Attorney Kimble. Great economist.
I'm not an economist. I just play one on TV.
We need people like you to speak out. Many people are afraid. Would you say, as Dr. King said, that this system is not for the poor? It's not for the average. We don't even have another contemplation to consider as being middle class in our society. Everybody's struggling.
Yeah.
Would you say this system, the structure of this system, is designed to keep people poor?
So this system was designed to protect the property rights of rich people. Now, if the consequence of that is people stay poor, then that's an unfortunate consequence.
Well said.
but the
Well
system was
said.
designed to make sure property rights of people who had resources were protected.
How do we combat that?
We've done it. It was funny, like during as President Roosevelt said when he got elected, said, I have to be successful or else I'll be the last president, right? So we put we put in the New Deal policies in. How do you think the average person in America has a house? It's not because they have money. It's because the government subsidized mortgages, the mortgage system, right? Or the highway system. They built all these so that you could ease of transfer. Or they built rural electricity all over the country, so everyone had electricity. So we've done it in the past. Or unions and pensions, all those rules. Like getting rid of used to be pensions were almost mandatory. Then they changed the rules so that you could replace that with the IRA the IRAs were a substitute or were a supplement to pensions. And then they started switching corporations started switching everyone over. So we've let corporate policy, we've let corporations and corporate policy drive way too much of our economics. Because corporations exist only to the benefit of the rich people, their shareholders and stockholders.
Should we I almost said this is the close of the program. I can't stop that.
I'm sorry.
Should we put more pressure on corporate America?
Absolutely. We're talking. We began this segment of talking about the reverse discrimination, and I tell you, corporations need to stand up. I mean, there's no doubt. Black people. You look across the workforce. Black people have less than 1% of everything. I mean, we have 1% of
less than 1%
of everything.
Of everything.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, for any job you want to look at, we're like less than 1% of every major job. From utility linemen to plumbers, or just so there's no way you can say that we have each equity or that we don't need remedial efforts. And so corporations need those law firms who capitulated on those lawsuits. There's no way they should be able to say when you go to their firms and there may be 2 black lawyers out of hundreds that somehow we've reached equity and there shouldn't be some reasonable effort made to bring in talent to be more inclusive. And I think that people need to stand up for that because that's a big deal.
So in closing, corporations where we spend our dollar, we buy our automobile, we buy our clothes, and all the other access to the necessity of survival.
Yeah.
Corporations need to be more sensitive than what they are. They make the politics.
Yep.
Black money matters. We as African Americans and black money matters. We got to vote. We died for the right to vote. But it's another entity that goes along with that marriage. Is that money? It's
money and it's pay attention to policy. So you've got to, the one thing we don't do very well as a group is demand the policy changes. By the time we figure out, like for instance, there's free broadband all over the country. Like if you live in a housing authority, there's a whole bunch of people who are eligible for free broadband. 16 million are eligible for free internet. like 2 million have gotten it. Like so we aren't paying attention to those policies, or the fact that the government just gave out $47 billion to build out broadband in all these communities, right? So we're talking about the insulin deserts. They say one of the reasons there's insulin deserts is a lack of broadband in all these communities. Well, these communities aren't paying attention to the rules to make sure they try to get
Who
that
should be paying attention in the community?
the leadership, like such as any think tanks, any foundations, elected officials. They should all be out there.
Church.
If the churches want to do that, they're because they're written into the bill. Churches are actually written into the law as viable options, but they're just not playing in the space, and they don't play in the space as much as they should at all. I mean, everywhere we turn.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard it from one of my greatest researchers and focus points in terms of the globalization of freedom and justice and equality. Attorney Kimble is one of the greatest. Attorney Kevin Kimbal, thank you.
Thank you. Good to
for
see you.
being with us.
Thanks for inviting me.
God bless you.